All right. So that's processing. What about cooling? There are lots of ways to cool product. And essentially you're cooling to buy time, to make the product last longer till the consumer uses it. You can use ice injection with things like broccoli, where you take shaved ice and put it in. Forced air fans, like with strawberries and lots of berries, where you're taking super cold air and you're blowing it through the pallets of product. Vacuum cooling, which we'll talk about at length later. All of the compressors and transportation systems that are involved in cooling. You can use super chilled water, which is different than hydro cooling. Hydro cooling is a combination of water chillers and vacuum cooling. You use them both at the same time. Wait a minute, no, I'm sorry, I said that wrong. Scratch that. I'm not going to redo the video because of that. Hydrovac is the combination of using the super chilled water and vacuum. But water chillers and hydro cooling are using super cooled water in very slightly different ways. Room cooling or space cooling, where you just stick stuff in the large refrigerator. That's basically it. You don't do much. You just stick it in a cold spot and let it get cooled. You can use cube locked or shaved ice where it's not being injected. You can use anhydrous ammonia or other things to refrigerate, to make the water cool, make the air cool. There's a whole science of cold chain management where you're trying to make sure that the product is harvested at a particular temperature that meets the needs, then it gets to the cooling very quickly. Once it's cooled, it gets to the grocery store without breaking that refrigeration chain, and hopefully getting to the consumer's refrigerator quickly. Warehouse designs are all about storing and cooling product. Once you get it to the supermarket, they've got their own issues. We'll talk about them later in the semester. And then the consumer refrigerators. It's not just their problem, it's your problem. When you design a bag, a box of material, you have to think, what's going to happen when the consumer gets home? The shape of a 12-pack of soda is different than when I was a kid. They are now shaped in a way to slide in on a shelf so that you can refrigerate the whole thing, open one end and just pop them out, and the whole thing is cold without interfering with too much space on the shelf. It's about efficiency, and it depends on the country you're in. The refrigeration needs, the shape of products in Japan is very different than in the US because their refrigeration requirements are different. The refrigerators are smaller and shaped differently. We can't assume everybody does everything the same way. What goes on when the consumer gets home? How do I make something that fits and it's convenient when they get it home? They can put it in the refrigerator if they need to, and it takes up as little space as possible so that it's there when they need it. If it's taking up too much space, if it's inefficient, maybe they stop buying it. And that's not good either. The last section is logistics, and this can be an entire career. If you're good at logistics, you can make a career out of it. This is how do you make it all fit? It's different than just industrial engineering that I discussed earlier. Logistics is about planning and scheduling and transportation and making sure that everything flows through the system efficiently. Industrial engineering is more about the manufacturing floor, whereas logistics is about the big picture of your company. And how does your product get into your facility to make sure that you have an uninterrupted supply of product coming in to be processed and prepared to sell without getting backed up or without having downtime where you don't have enough product coming in. And once it's in, how do you make sure it gets through your company and turned into your sellable product? That bag of salad, that can of peaches, that loaf of bread. How do you make sure it's all working efficiently? That piece is industrial engineering mostly. And then how do I get it to my customers? And it deals with your sales, your marketing, and your truck drivers, and all of your customer orders, making sure you're filling them all and you're getting the product everywhere it needs to be across the country or around the world. That's logistics. It's a big deal. There's entire departments, programs of study. You can major in logistics. But what do you have to think of? How am I going to store things? Not only the stuff that's coming in, my raw product coming in that needs to be processed, but the stuff that is processed and is ready to go, but it's waiting for the truck. It's waiting to be shipped to the customer. Storage is huge. And it's more important in agriculture because unlike a manufacturer that makes tennis shoes, yeah, if it sits a little too long, if it gets a little too warm, whatever, tennis shoes can sit there a while and there's no big deal. I've got a clamshell of strawberries and it sits there an extra couple of days, throw it out. There is no forgiveness in delays with living products in agriculture. There are some exceptions. If I'm making canned peaches, once they're in the can, I got some time. But in a lot of products, there's very little or no forgiveness. So you've got to think about what is the temperature, what is the humidity, and am I keeping it properly controlled for my products? And am I not storing things that don't get along well together? You do not ever store your apples with your bananas or your apples with your lettuce. Apples give off something called ethylene gas. Ethylene is a chemical that helps in ripening, but it causes brown russet spotting in your lettuce. It causes premature ripening of your bananas if you get too much. And so you need to know what products go well together. What about atmosphere control? Am I just in my storage area? Is it just air? Or do I have a low oxygen environment with nitrogen gas? Oh, I forgot I had that already in this. Do not store lettuce with apples. And there's a lot of things that don't get along. You got to know those. A lot of smaller companies learn that the hard way. They're sending trucks across from point A to point B. If it's, an hour across town, that's one thing. But if you're doing a long haul shipment of something and it's in there for too long, you can really do some damage. What about intake vents in your coolers? We had some greenhouses that all kinds of things started to go haywire because due to some problems, the tractors started to refuel, and the tractors with burning diesel, they would refuel too close to the intake vents, and we would get ethylene gas, which is another byproduct of burning diesel and gasoline. You get a little bit of ethylene and it ruined some of our product. So you have to make sure that vents aren't too close to loading docks. That's a really expensive thing to learn the hard way. All the transportation and trucking, I'm not going to get into that, but it is one of the most difficult mathematical problems that's never been solved. What do they call it? The traveling salesman problem, I think it's called. And how do you get the most efficient transportation system? There is no simple answer. And so you have to do your best. How do I get the trucks to get all my product where it needs to go with all of these different temperature requirements, atmosphere requirements? Apple's not getting along with lettuce, and I need to get product from Baltimore to Brisbane, Australia. How the heck do I do it? Quality control, somebody has to be there, an entire department dealing with the quality of your product. Checking, monitoring, making sure that it meets my customer specifications, meets the food safety requirements, all of those things. People are double checking as you're going. Food safety, another entire department that's often linked very closely to quality control. We'll talk about HACCP, the Hazard Analysis and Critical Control Points. You need to know that acronym. hazard analysis and critical control points. But how do you know things are safe? You do sampling of the product, you do sampling of your equipment and machinery, you do tests, you have a recall plan if anything does go wrong, you have traceability. So if somebody says, hey, there's a E. coli in this bag of lettuce, or there's listeria in my cheese, how can you trace that back to know where it was manufactured, when it was manufactured, which line or piece of equipment was it on, etc. The better your traceability, the smaller, more focused your recall can be. Barcoding, I should add to that. I won't right now, but barcoding or QR coding or RFID tagging. Barcoding is just one example, but there's a number of technologies. Now they have the QR codes. It looks like a bunch of dots in a square. I'm sure all of you know what QR codes are now, I hope. If you don't, look up QR codes and you'll go, oh, those things. And then there's RFID, or radio frequency identification. It's the same idea as chipping your cat. You put this little tiny chip in your cat and there's some information, who the cat is and the owner, and or whatever information, so they can link your cat. If your cat is ever found someplace, they can find out where it came from and hopefully get it back to the owner. So you chip your pets frequently. You can use the same kinds of chipping with different techniques to reduce theft in your stores. Those little machines that beep, beep, beep if you're trying to take something out, that's the same kind of thing as an RFID tag. Or you can use those same kind of scanners. Instead of tracking your cat, you're tracking a pallet of material trucking across the country. And so much. We'll get into some of these later, but the pH, or the acidity of your product, that's super important in many cases. What about legal liability? Who's responsible if something goes wrong? What about contracts, and how do you deal with those contracts? Not only contracts with your suppliers, but contracts with your customers. I'm going to guarantee I'm going to buy so much from you, supplier, and you're going to guarantee me some price for that product. And I'm going to turn around, I'm going to guarantee you, customer, that I'm going to get you finished product in X number amount by X day for X price. All those contracts have to be in place. That's all part of your logistics. What about the crop history, the field? You know, it all starts at the field. The whole crop in the field, you need to know, where did my raw product come from and what do I know about that product? Inventory, there's something you should know. FIFO, first in, first out. Sometimes I get laughed at by my wife because I'll say, oh, I'm going to FIFO the towels. So what do? You know, the dish towels or something, I do a load of dish towels. Instead of sticking the fresh dish towels on top of the pile, what am I going to do? I'm going to take the older dish towels that were at the bottom of the pile, take them out, put the clean ones there, and put the other ones at the bottom. Does that matter with dish towels? No, but I'm kind of in the habit of rotating things through. It's more important maybe in the cupboard. You know, I go through garbanzo beans or chickpeas in the cabinet. If I constantly am grabbing the front can, and when I buy a new one, I stick it in the front, the one in the back might end up going past its expiration date. So what do? First in, first out. You really got to do that when you're dealing with strawberries. When a load comes out of the field and you bring it in, you got to get it cooled. First one there gets cooled first, and it gets shipped to the customer first, so that nothing is sitting there. Very important to have efficient flow of your inventory. You have to have marketing, which isn't the same as sales. Marketing is getting people to recognize your product, the design of your bag. Which shelf did you negotiate for on the supermarket shelf? Is there something that attracts attention so somebody will grab it and put it in their shopping cart? Is there any point of sale? POS is point of sale information that could help. Maybe next to those strawberries, you put a little bit of some sort of cake, the shortbread, not shortbread, whatever, those little cakes, and a can of Cool Whip or something, trying to get people to think, oh, I can make strawberry shortcakes tonight. Rather than just seeing the strawberries, you've kind of created an image, a point of sale image to get somebody to go, ooh, that sounds really good. I'm going to have strawberry shortcake tonight. Cost of goods sold, that's a business term, but you've got to keep track of all of that. How much does it cost for you to make that product to get out the door? You've got to keep track of that. You got to make money on all of this. And all of the other stuff, sales, promotions, and customer relations. There's a lot to deal with in this segment of the business. All of these customers that you're selling to, there's a whole lot between you and them, and a lot of opportunities for businesses in trucking, in warehousing, in cooling. So it depends on where you are. There's lots going on after the production, after the grower grows the crop. A lot of people think of agriculture, it's about growing crops. And then as soon as you're done growing that lettuce, growing those carrots, growing those potatoes, it's over. Oh, hell no, it's not anywhere close to over. A lot of the real fun begins at that moment for a lot of people. And so all of this product cooling, transportation, logistics, processing, customer relations, there's tons of stuff in agriculture. And we're going to spend the semester talking about each of these things, and some in great detail, some in less detail. And it's really important that you think about how these things fit together, how they make the product that came out of the field, out of the greenhouse, out of the grower's hands, how they make that product into something that the consumer is going to put in their refrigerator, put in their pantry, put on their plates. So that's it for brainstorming. A lot of things you should study, understand, think about, try and wrap your head around all of the different things that we talked about. And this isn't everything. There's all the other business stuff you have to think about, the insurance and the labor force and unions and or non-union shops and purchasing of packaging materials from various vendors, the price of oil coming out of OPEC and how that's going to impact my availability and price of the clamshells, and on and on and on. It takes a lot of years of a lot of experience to realize how much you deal with. So that is product processing and cooling brainstorming part 1.